I'm Jolene Wynn, and this is the Porn Addict's Wife podcast, episode number 162, Some Days Are Hard. Hello, my ladies. How are you? I am coming to you a little bit later than normal. Normally, I have my podcast recorded and out on midnight Monday morning. So those of you who are early risers, get this bright and early. I know you guys listen to it before you go to work or as you're getting your kids ready or when you are getting up in the morning. And so you will notice today that it's just a few hours later than normal. And that is because I am processing a lot of emotion over the last couple of days. And I kept waiting for myself to process it out fully so that I could be in a better energy, a more positive energy, I should say, to record a podcast for you guys, because nobody really wants to get on a podcast and listen to somebody who's not feeling great. Like, that's just kind of depressing. So I kept waiting and thinking that I would be able to process this out and work this out and that I would come to you guys in a much more positive energy. And that is just not happening. And what I realized and what I wanted to convey to you guys on this episode today is that that's okay. I know that a lot of you guys on this podcast may feel like I've got all of it together, and I totally do. But what that means to me isn't that my life is perfect. It doesn't mean that I don't feel negative emotion. It doesn't mean that my husband and I aren't still working on stuff. As you guys know, my husband and I have been working on the hardest things we've ever worked through over the last 7 months. And last week we had a huge breakthrough and it was amazing. And there were a few days that were just kind of blissful. And then it's just regular life again. There's still the 50-50. Even though we had these great breakthroughs, there's still the 50-50 of being in a relationship and still working through things and learning how to navigate it and just the regular stuff that's coming up. And so it's been a lot of emotion that has come up for me. And I just wanted to record this episode for y'all today for those days, for the days when it's hard, the days when you don't want to get out of bed, the days when you just want to close your eyes and pull the covers up over your head. And I know I've done several podcasts on this before. I know there's one that I did about finding peace. I know that there's one that I did about how to take care of yourself in those moments when you're in emotional overwhelm and all of these things. But today I just wanted to acknowledge it from a different angle, that some days are hard. Ladies, some days are hard. Some days you're going to feel a lot of negative emotion. Ladies, this weekend has been amazing. My husband had a birthday and it was Father's Day, and it was also really hard because there was a lot of negative emotion that came up and it's still coming up. I'm getting emotional and that's okay. And I wanted to give you guys just a couple of tools today that I use when days are hard, because yes, there are going to be days that are hard. Now, the tools that I'm going to teach you guys on this podcast, these are the ones that make it okay to have hard days. One of the reasons why hard days are so difficult is because we don't know how to deal with them. Okay. But when you know how to deal with them, then they're not as hard. And then you don't have to live your life trying to avoid them. Does that make sense? So let me give you a couple tips. The first one that I want is for you guys to say is to identify what is hard. Right? Your brain's like, man, today is hard. Okay. What I want to offer is that the first thing that you can do is identify what is hard. Because what happens when we think, man, today is so hard, if you don't identify what specifically is difficult, then your brain is going to interpret everything that day as being difficult. This makes sense? I have done this so many times. It's like, man, today is just the worst. And then you have all day, your brain will just collect evidence about how it's the worst and how you lost your keys and how, because you put them on the pantry shelf when you were trying to put away groceries, but then your kid helped. And so they put the ice cream in the pantry and it melted everywhere and it got all over everything and you had to clean it up. But then also you couldn't find your shoe, or the dog chewed the carpet, or the red light made you late. Like, your brain will just interpret everything as being hard, if that's what you're going with. So it can be very, very helpful. Even if you want to acknowledge that today is hard, it can be very helpful to identify what is being difficult. Okay. So here's the question that you can ask that helps me. And that is, what is it that my brain thinks is hard about today or right now? Even being more specific than just today in general. It's like, what does my brain think is hard right now? Okay. And here's what's going to come up typically. Here are some just typical responses. Number one is going to be emotion. Okay. Today is hard because I feel overwhelmed. Today is hard because I feel frustrated. Today is hard because I feel left out, whatever it is. Your brain often will say that whatever emotion that we're feeling, whatever negative emotion that we're feeling, it will take that negative emotion and it will say, this is hard, and it will generalize it to today is hard. And so again, it can be very, very helpful to get very specific. Okay, what is it that's hard about right now? And oh, this is just an emotion that I'm feeling. And when you recognize that it's just an emotion that you're feeling, this gives you leverage over it because it doesn't mean it's going to last forever. When it's something that you actually have control over, right? Does this make sense? Your brain wants to think that today is hard and there's nothing you can do about it. Our brain really likes to sit in that space. It's very tempting to sit in that space. It feels really good because it's not our fault. But the problem is that then there's also nothing we can do about it. But when you identify what it is, okay, what is it that my brain thinks is hard about right now? And it comes up, oh, my brain thinks that what's hard right now is the way that I'm feeling. That gives you leverage because you actually do have control over your emotions. One, you can recognize the thought that's creating it and choose a different thought if you want to. Or two, you can acknowledge the thought that's creating it. You can choose to keep it, but then you can process that emotion so that you don't have to sit in it. Does that make sense? So you always have control over your emotion. Control over your emotion doesn't necessarily mean that you just change it. It doesn't mean you just change the thought that creates it. It means you can do that, but you can also just acknowledge it and want it and allow it and sit and process it. Either way, you have control over what you do with it. Does that make sense? Another thing that might come up is when your brain is identifying something that's hard. Another thing that I see frequently is comparison. Our brains often think that what is difficult about right now is that it finds it difficult based on how things used to be or how you think they could be or should be. Okay. Your brain, for example, will take, it'll make what you're feeling and it'll apply meaning to it in a comparison situation, right? We're never going to get past this. Okay, that's kind of projecting onto the future. It's a comparison of where the future is going. It's trying to predict it, and it's not in a positive light. Or he's never going to blah, blah, blah. Or I'm always the one that ... You guys with me? Our brain will take a comparison. It'll put these big all or nothing, always, never, these big black and white generalizations on it and compare it to the past or to the future. Okay, it'll say, man, we are not where I want to be. We were so much better before. I just want to go back. I thought this was going to get better, right? I thought we were moving forward, but now I feel like this, and now I feel like I'm going backwards. Now I feel like we are 10 steps back. I thought we were moving forward and we're not. There's the comparison. It's a judgment of where you are, of what you're feeling right now, and your brain will take that judgment and that comparison and will use that against yourself, unintentionally making what you're going through even harder than what it is. One of the best skills that you can learn that will help you through hard times is learning how to release all of the judgment and all of the story and all of the drama and just get to what is. Now, this is very, very tricky because our brain has a lot of judgment. It has a lot of story. It wants to make things mean a lot of things, and then it will unintentionally make things more difficult. We will layer judgment and we will layer disappointment and we will layer frustration and we will layer overwhelm on top of whatever it is that we're feeling, which makes it even harder, which our brain wants to do because it wants to prove to you that the today is hard. Right? And that's confirmation bias. Our brain wants to prove to us that we're right. Yeah, today's hard. And everyone would agree. Look at all of these things, right? But when we can let that go, when you can learn the skill of whittling that down and letting go of the drama and the story and coming back to just what is, that is what enables you to actually work through it. Okay. And this is a skill that you can learn. And part of that is getting very clear and identifying what is it that my brain thinks is hard right now. And most of the time, it's going to come down to what it is that you are feeling. Okay. Now, the solution to this is to feel the feelings. Okay, so first we identify it. So first we have to identify it, right? What is it that my brain thinks is hard right now? And then the second thing is we have to acknowledge it. We say, you know what? Yeah, today is hard. and that's okay. Give yourself permission to have a hard day. Give yourself permission for your brain to think that whatever it is that you're feeling is hard. Give your brain permission to think how it is. Give yourself permission to feel whatever it is that you're feeling, okay? We identify what it is that our brain thinks is hard, and then we acknowledge it. And we say, you know what? Yeah, feeling lonely can be hard. My brain thinks that feeling lonely is hard. Maybe it feels a little hard to feel lonely, and that's okay. I'm feeling lonely right now. That is okay. It's all right that I feel that way. It's okay that I feel like that's hard. It's okay that I sit and I feel this, and that's not my favorite thing to do. Give yourself permission to acknowledge it. So we identify it and then we acknowledge it, and then you get to decide what you're going to do with this emotion, how you're going to respond to it. This is the most powerful place that you have, okay? Most of us are not in control of our emotions. Most of us react to our emotions. We distract ourselves from them. We try to avoid them and shove them down as much as possible, right? And what I want to offer instead is that you sit and you feel it and give yourself permission to feel your feelings. That's the third thing. Identify, acknowledge, and then give yourself permission to feel your feelings. Now, here's the thing with feeling your feelings or processing your emotion, I use those interchangeably, is that most of us don't do it fully. Most of us just kind of hover around the emotion and it kind of stays just below the surface. This is that kind of the day where you feel like you're on the edge of bursting into tears at any point, right? This is like you don't want anybody to look at you wrong or say anything wrong to you, or you're just like on edge a little bit because you know you're like right there. You guys with me? You know what I'm talking about? We think that when we're at that place, that's us feeling our feelings. And what I want to offer is that I want to offer that you guys can take it a level deeper. And what that looks like, and I've said this before, I'm going to say it to you a million times because this is the secret, ladies, to working through all of the emotional trauma and hurt and pain from your husband's pornography problem is processing your feelings. This is it. This is the secret that I say over and over and over, and that I teach my clients day in and day out, is to learn how to process your emotions. Go sit in your closet for 5 minutes at the end of the day by yourself without your phone. Turn off the light and sit and feel in your body what it feels like with whatever it is that your brain thinks is the problem today. Okay, what does my brain think is hard about today? And you sit and you feel that. What is it that I feel and where do I feel it? And your brain's going to want to say, this is so stupid. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do this. And you just acknowledge that and you let it go and you go back. Where do I feel it in my body? Do I feel it in my head or my stomach or my chest? What does it feel like? Does it feel soft? Does it feel hard? Does it feel fluttery? Is it smooth? Is it rough? Does it have a color? And don't judge yourself for what comes up, but sit and feel it. That is processing your emotion. That is feeling your feelings. And it's very different than what we normally do, than just letting it hover beneath the surface. So on days that are hard, that's going to be the day that our brain really doesn't want to go sit with the emotion, because it feels like if you do, you're going to break. It feels like if I acknowledge this emotion that I'm feeling right now, that I'm just going to lose it. I'm going to break down. I'm not going to be able to get through my day and nothing is going to happen and I'm just going to lose it. And that is when our brain will resist the most. And that's actually when you need to do it the most. On those days when you feel overwhelmed, on those days when that emotion feels like it might take over, that's when you need to sit down and process it, because that's when it's already there. That's when it's already affecting you. That's when it's already boiling over and it's just overflowing in your life. And the only way to get control of that is to sit and feel it and allow yourself to process it and give yourself permission to let it go. This is why it becomes really important to let go of the story, because the way to process an emotion, especially when you don't want to feel it, is you have to be willing to let go of the story. One of the reasons why we don't want to let go of our pain, one of the reasons why we hold onto our pain so tightly when our husband is addicted to pornography, is because we are afraid of what we make it mean when we let it go. This actually came up on a call last week with a client, and she's been working with me for a couple months. She is making such amazing progress, and I'm so proud of her. And she's starting to finally feel better about herself and to heal from some things and to move forward. And she's responding to her husband differently, and her brain is resisting it hardcore because she said, and I have heard this so many times, she is not unique in this, is she said, I'm worried that I'm scared of healing. Does that just mean that my husband has permission to do whatever he wants? And that's what our brain is worried about. Our brain is worried that the more we let go of our pain, our brain then creates a story of what that means. It means that we're letting it go. It means that it doesn't matter. It means that he has permission to go do whatever he wants. That is not what it means. So whatever emotion it is that you're feeling, your brain has a story for why it wants to hold on to it. And you have to be willing to let it go. Sometimes that might mean your brain is worried about letting go because then it might think that you're wrong, but maybe you are. And you have to be willing to let that go. A long time ago, I did a podcast episode and it was like the 3 keys to like moving forward. And they all start with an H, I think. And one of them, and I always say this, the biggest one is humility, because sometimes there are going to be things that come up for you that are really uncomfortable to acknowledge, that you don't want to look at, that you don't want to admit even to yourself, and they might come up for you. And it's hard. It's hard to sit there and say, you know what, this is right. The way that I'm feeling totally miserable, and my brain wants to justify it. My brain wants to say, no, it's not my fault. My brain wants to say, no, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with you. They're just making it up. This is not a problem. But what I want you to offer is like you process that emotion and then take a look at it and see if you can't find the truth in it. Because most of the time, the reason that things hurt us is because of the truth that's in it. And that might look like something you want to work on, or it might look like a belief that you have about yourself, right? What you're making it mean about you. Am I making this mean? Am I making my husband's pornography problem mean that I'm not enough? Am I making it mean that we're never going to make it? Am I making it mean that I have my parents' marriage? Right? There can be meaning that we place that way. Or there might be something not with your husband's pornography problem, or just something different that comes up. And it might be your opportunity to look at that and say, okay, where is this actually accurate? Is there something about myself that I want to change? The truth, ladies, is that your husband's pornography problem did not create any of these issues that you're having. It's just bringing them to the surface. And now you get to decide what you're going to do with it. And that's going to mean that some days are hard. Some days it's going to bring up a lot of negative emotion. Some days you're going to feel really close to losing it, and that's totally okay. But the thing that can help is, number 1, identifying what it is. What is it that my brain thinks is hard right now? Getting really clear, really specific, because that's what gives us the ability to move through it. Number 2 is acknowledging it. Yeah, this is hard. My brain thinks that this emotion is difficult. And then number 3, we process it. You sit and you feel that feeling, especially on days when you feel like feeling that feeling, you don't even want to touch it because you feel like if you even just look in the direction of your emotion, you're going to burst into tears. Give yourself permission. Go in your closet, sit there, burst into tears. It's okay. Sit and feel the feeling, process it. Give yourself permission to feel it. And then, I didn't really say this as a step, but the 4th one is find the truth. I kind of mentioned that, right? Like find the truth of what it is. What am I making this mean? Why am I holding on to this? And what if I'm willing to let it go? What if I were willing to let go of this emotion? What if I were willing to let go of this comparison? What if I were willing to let go of the story of what I make this mean? Am I willing to do that? Am I willing to let go of the idea that this means that I'm a pushover? Am I willing to let go of the belief that I'm not enough? Am I willing to let go of whatever it is that I'm making this mean? And the last thing that I want to offer is that you give yourself permission to keep hope. On days when you feel despair and loneliness and worthlessness and defeat, it's very tempting to not give yourself permission to have hope. But I want to offer that that's the days, again, that it's most important that you do. Because yes, today is hard. And I want you to give yourself permission again to acknowledge that. But today is not the end unless you make it so. And that's what I want you to remember. On those days when it's hard, acknowledge it, identify it, acknowledge it, process it. Find the truth, and then also give yourself hope. Because yes, today is hard, but it's not the end unless you make it stay there. If you want to change the way that you feel, you can. If you're not, then that means you want to stay in it. And so maybe that's what you need to acknowledge. Today is hard because my brain thinks that this emotion is hard, And I don't want to let it go yet. And that's okay. But even adding the word yet can be one of the most powerful words that you add on the end of any sentence. I haven't forgiven him yet. I don't trust him yet. Today is hard, but tomorrow might be better. And today is only hard and is only the end if that's what I decide. One of the best things I ever realized about myself was that I'm not broken. And even if I feel broken, that's okay, because I can fix me, because I'm the only one that can break me. So if I feel broken, I can just acknowledge it, and I can identify it, and I can acknowledge it, and I can accept it, and I can process it, and I can find the truth in it. And then I can give myself hope and say, you know what? If today I'm feeling broken, that's okay, because today is not the end unless I decide to stay here. All right, ladies, thanks for joining me today. I love you all so much, and I will see you guys next week on a brand new episode. So take care.